tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Where I want to start with this maybe is congruent with the sense of tonight as having a kind of last gathering of the year tone to it. Oh, so much of our investigation in this group recently might be summed up under the theme of like, how do we skillfully practice? What is skillful practice or skillful cultivation? Sometimes we'll emphasize that there isn't a word specifically that means meditation in the early Buddhist language of Pali in the texts. There's a couple of different words that sometimes get translated as meditation. One of them is the word jhana, which I think more appropriately gets translated as absorption. So profound states of immersed tranquility and concentrated mind, heart. And so meditation is not just that. So then I think that's not the best candidate. There's this more general term, bhavana or bhavana, which means cultivation, right? And it relates to the same root as bhava, becoming or coming to be. This bhavana as cultivation it's also in a way not just meditation, but if in a way jhana is like a subset of meditation, the specific, tranquility, concentration-oriented absorptions, bhavana is a bigger basket than meditation. Meditation is one kind of cultivation, but the whole path that we're on is involved in a large project of cultivating qualities in our lives. And a lot is made of the result of cultivating those qualities, results like awakening or enlightenment or insight, seeing clearly, understanding, letting go of constrictions in the heart, letting go, period. Becoming concentrated, working out our stuff, learning to act more clearly. All of that is results or is at how the path unfolds, how we unfold as we walk on the path. All of those experiences and actions, moments, phenomena happen because there's a cultivation that we are undertaking. One of the things that the Buddha would emphasize again and again is that the path is gradual. And one of the metaphors for it that I like is he likened it to the gradual slope from the beach into the deep ocean. And this makes me think that the oceans, near North India are a gradual slope and not like a crazy drop off like it is in a few places off California. But there's a wonderful text where the Buddha is talking with a deity of the ocean, an ocean deity, one of the sort of titans of Neptune or something, one of those kind of figures, and this ocean deva says, the ocean devas, plural, love the ocean for 8 reasons. And they give all these reasons, and the first reason is that it slopes gradually from shallow to deep. And I love that would be a quality of the ocean that the ocean devas would delight in. It's almost aesthetic. They're like, we just like that it's really smooth on the edges, and I'm like, okay, that's great. The ocean devas love that. That's great. And the ocean devas love a lot of other things, like that whatever river empties into the ocean, when it empties into the ocean, it loses its name. Like the Ganga and the Yamuna and the Saraswati, the three great rivers that converge in the delta in what's now Bangladesh. Uh, this when they reach the ocean, they lose their separateness and their names, and they just become the great ocean. And another is that the ocean doesn't it doesn't tolerate a carcass, but spits it back up on the beach. And there's a whole bunch more qualities. There's 8 of them. And then and the Buddha says, and then the ocean deva says, "Blessed one, what does the Sangha love about the Dharma, about the teachings?" And the Buddha says, in just this way, and then uses the exact 8 things about the ocean as images. He reinterprets them in terms of what's wonderful about the Dhamma. And he says that the first thing that the Sangha loves about the Dhamma is that it slopes gradually and gently from the shallow to the deep, to profound awakening. And the Sangha loves this. And just as the ocean spits up a carcass back onto the beach, the Sangha spits out unwholesome monks. It doesn't tolerate them. There's once a moment. It's late night. The Sangha is sitting there, and it's time to recite the monastic rules, the Patimokkha, which they do every fortnight, so every 2 weeks on the quarter moons each month, or on the half moons each month. I mean, the full and the new. And it's time to start the recitation. And up till this point, the Buddha has always led the recitation. And he sits there and he's silent. And he sits and he sits and he sits. And the monks start to get a little fidgety. And they're like, "Why is the Buddha silent? It's time to recite the Patimokkha." And finally, one of the senior monks, says, "Blessed one, why aren't you reciting the Patimokkha?" And the Buddha says, "The Sangha is impure. We cannot recite the Patimokkha with an impurity in the Sangha." And then Mahamoggallana, who's the monk with the most psychic powers, casts his inner eye over the entire assembled monks, and he finds the rotten monk who's not keeping the precepts, and he's not of clear intention. And goes up to him and says, "Monk, get out of the hall." And the guy doesn't move. And he asks him 3 times. And finally, the monks pick him up by his robes and throw him out and shut the door with the bolt, the text says. And then the Buddha says, the training rules cannot be recited in an impure assembly. And that ends up turning into a lot of complicated legal rules for how you deal with, troublesome monks. But that's the first. That's the ocean spitting up the carcass, the Sangha spitting out an impurity. Anyway, so I said all of that to say that there's this quality of the Dhamma that it slopes gradually from the beach to the depths. And this gradual sloping is preceded along by this bhavana, this practice of cultivation. And so when we cultivate, what we're doing is we are inviting and invoking qualities that are maybe weak in us, and we're finding wholesome qualities that are that need strengthening, and we fuel them, we support them. The philosophical underpinning of the entire practice is that actions have results, right? This is the principle of causality or specific conditionality. Because of this arises. This is so important, it can't be overstated, right? But the core principle is that we are not we are neither saved nor doomed, in and of ourselves, right? We're not sinners, nor are we saints. To duck into the Christian language for a moment, we're actually just processes. And these processes can be influenced, and they will change anyway, and we can change them. So there's a marvelous agency at the heart of the Dhamma. There's no external deity who saves us. There's being saved is not it's not something that is done to us, but it's a result of our own cultivation. And so as we practice, then we orient toward the growing of wholesome qualities. So the beginning of that, classically in the Eightfold Path, is the second limb of wise intention. So speak to intention a little bit. Before intention comes the first limb of wise view. Like before we know what to cultivate, we have to have a reason to do so. So in the limb of wise view, we begin with turning our gaze in an honest way, in a sincere way, toward the fact of our suffering. We say, oh, this is painful. So much in this situation is painful. And we hear the explanation given for why things are painful. We say, there's something that we can do about it, right? There's something in our own heart that contributes to the painfulness in such a powerful way that if we shift that aspect of our own heart, the painful quality of things can shift radically. We hear this, it pulls on something in the heart. Some part of us wants to give this a chance. So and I think what's so beautiful to me about this aspect of right view, the turning toward the Four Noble Truths, is that when I start to turn toward it, I don't have any evidence that the path is going to work. The world around me has told me that if I, work hard and do the right things, I'm going to get enough of what I want, and that's as good as it gets. That's the materialistic happiness. The Christian world that I came from said what the Christian world says about being saved. The Four Noble Truths doesn't bow to either of those explanations. It gives something else entirely, and it says there's a quality in your own heart that that contributes so powerfully to the feeling of this life being painful, and that you can contact it, you can feel it, you can see it happening, and you can do something about it. Right? This craving can be uprooted. It can come to cessation. So that's the limb of right view. If you accept that enough to begin cultivating, then you get to start working on yourself, working on the qualities of the awakened heart. And so right intention is the limb that follows that. In order to know what to cultivate, you have to be given some guidance. And the very first guidance is that it's helpful to cultivate the qualities of the intention toward harmlessness, toward not killing beings, not harming beings. The intention toward kindness or non-hatred, and the intention toward letting go. These are the three classical right intentions. The intention of renunciation, letting go, and non-harming. And you can flip all of those into their positive aspects of generosity, loving kindness, and compassion, like care for beings, and so I'm going to touch a little bit the question about intention that came up. Pausing here at intention. One thing to know about intention is that intention can be both an action or an internal orientation or turning that we do on purpose, right? You can say, I'm going to make an intention for the new year. I'm going to invite compassion and loving kindness for myself and those around me more this year. And I'm going to do it in this way. I'm going to try to remember every day. You could structure it any number of ways, but you're trying to do it on purpose. That's one form of intention where you're kind of setting yourself in a direction with some energy to move in that direction. Um, and another form of intention is when you notice the energy that's behind your actions already. And this is when we say like, oh, my intentions are mixed. Like, I notice that I, I'm trying to cultivate loving kindness toward difficult people, let's say, folks who are challenging for me in my field. But maybe I notice that I at the same time, I sincerely want to feel more loving kindness for them, but I also want to not be annoyed by them. And I might catch myself using loving kindness to try to, not be annoyed by them. And suddenly, I might even find myself using loving kindness kind of in the hopes that maybe if my loving kindness is powerful enough, it'll kind of magically change them and they'll actually become better, nicer, kinder, less annoying. They'll vote the way I prefer, whatever I'm going for here. Um, do not drag yourself over the coals for having mixed intentions. It's like that. It's completely natural. The intention that is, not as wholesome, it's just an old hindrance, and that's okay. Like that's just what you find. When you start to practice, you find hindrances. Um, you know, uh, in the middle of any of the hindrances, you can also find a wholesome characteristic, by the way, right? Like your self-doubt that is so tormenting all these years, right? If you really feel into it, maybe 95% of it is unwholesome and not fit to be cultivated. And maybe 5% in there is actually an accurate assessment of your faults. And like you could make that into a perfectly reasonable list of things to work on. You could say, well, it's true that I could be more patient and more loving and, not untrue. But the whole rest of it about how, I kind of suck because of those things, that's, that's self-doubt and self-criticism, and stop it, if you can, like notice that. That's it. That part is a hindrance. But all of the hindrances have aspects in them that are beautiful, right? You wouldn't be tormented by lust if the world wasn't saturated in this extraordinary eros that is beautiful. And you wouldn't be tormented by hatred if some people really were not, I'm not sure what, if there weren't just truly awful people in the world, right? It's not wrong that you're like, yeah, those people are acting terribly. It's like, well, they are. That's discernment. The whole rest, where you wish that they would like suffer or various things, feel shame, that's ill will, right? When you wish for them to suffer. So intention is always mixed, and so don't worry about that, right? But it's our practice then to cultivate, to actually sort of figure out, to tease apart, here's the wholesome part and here's the unwholesome part. You cultivate the wholesome and you diminish the unwholesome. Like that's bhavana, that's cultivation. Um, and just a side note on judging others, because it's so easy to do and so mostly useless. Don't worry about other people. Like, if someone's walk doesn't measure up to their talk, then don't be friends with them, or don't be their student, or don't vote for them. Um, but otherwise, Um, the only time it's really, I think, helpful to spend a lot of mental or emotional energy on other people and their faults is if they, is if they come to you for advice or they want to be your student or you're stuck around the family dinner table with them. And even then, I don't know, you know, mostly you let other people deal with their own karma. And, it's hard enough dealing with your own. So we start with intention. We have the intention to cultivate these good qualities. And then our practice, this is the sixth limb. I'm going to jump to limb six, right effort. The practice is to strengthen the wholesome qualities and weaken the unwholesome ones. So if there's a wholesome one that's present, make it stronger. If there's a wholesome quality that's not present, find it, right? If there's an unwholesome quality that's present, make it weaker. And if there's an unwholesome quality not present, prevent it, right? This crosses into the territory of effort in an interesting way, because you get two very different instructions that come along. One is the effort to make strong effort, to strive, to intend, to practice fiercely to diminish unwholesome states and uplift wholesome ones. There's throughout the texts, the Buddha uses warrior imagery to discuss how to work with the heart and mind that have so many bad habits accumulated over so many endless lifetimes of, living on this in this world. So many bad habits to accumulate over countless millennia of lifetimes. And so he says, like, yeah, it takes a fair amount of energy to actually address these, to not be just swept under by their force. At the same time, the radical thing that he discovers when he realizes that he's making effort in all the wrong ways early in his practice, he realizes that the path to liberation goes through jhana. And the states of jhana are effortless. Right? They are like a child sitting on the edge of a field under a rose apple tree on a spring day, undistracted by anything going on around, and resting effortlessly in the stability of the senses and the body being open and present without confusion in a sustained way. It's a childlike, simple, concentrated state. So then he refines that and he says, okay, that is the core state that we're going for. And then that refines even further into states where the energy is big and beautiful and even less effortful. Like once concentration is stabilized, there's even less effort, until there's a profound resting and at ease. And then turning toward insight, he makes letting go be the pinnacle of practice. So the path toward letting go very much involves cultivating the states of tranquility, absorption, settledness, and ease. And then they lead to a progress of insight that is also effortless in a certain way. Right? It's effortless because the thing you're doing is you're letting go of layer after layer after layer of constriction. However, and this is very mysterious, our bad habits are almost all the time, this is like for most people, sufficiently dense and thick and well grooved in the heart mind that it takes a fair amount of force to get to them. And but that force is the force of non-doing. So I'm going to try to say this in a non-confusing way. Here's a story from my own childhood. Long before I had heard anything about the Dharma or anything about anything, um, this was probably when I was like, I can't imagine I was older than 10. I think that I did this for a few years, maybe between like 8 and 10, somewhere in there, way pre-teenage years. Um, I came up with this game where I would sit in a chair. I was always sitting in a chair. I'd sit in a chair, and and it occurred to me that I could tell myself to stand up and then not stand up. And I did this thing. This was this was strangely completely compelling to child me. I did this thing where I would try to intend as strongly as I could to get up. I would try to like, I would feel what it was like to like, yeah, I'm going to get up, and then I would get up. Okay, that's what it feels like. And then I would try to have exactly that same feeling, but then not do it. Why it occurred to me to do this, I don't know. But I think I was trying to figure out how to ignore an impulse or something like that. The effort that it requires to deepen in cultivation of letting go and concentrated states and tranquility um, is is a little bit like that at times. It's like the effort to, it's the effort to not do something, really. And so this crosses over into addiction psychology a little bit. If you have a substance in your cupboard, I'll say chocolate, um, but it could be anything, of course. You have a substance in your cupboard that it's not the right time to consume, um, but but it's there. Sometimes there will be this moment where you pass by the cupboard and you want to get it, right? Or you pass by your phone and you want to turn it on, or you pass by whatever it is, whatever something's pulling on the heart, and um, and renunciation, which is one of those core intentions, right? The intention to letting go. Renunciation depends on the cultivation of the skill to notice that impulse, to assess it very quickly, right? Is it wholesome or unwholesome? Is this something, you know, am I craving a glass of water because I'm authentically thirsty and it's completely appropriate to have a glass of water? Or am I craving some chocolate because I'm heartbroken and I can't quite deal with my feelings and that's what I do? You have to know that very quickly, and then know in the moment, in what might actually be an emotionally aroused, kind of confusing moment, which impulse to follow. And that is at the heart of the whole project. And because you can't cultivate wholesome states without figuring out how to let go of unwholesome ones, right? You can't just add uh, goodness on top of a pile of muck. You have to clear. You also have to do the purification process, clearing out the muck. And clearing out the muck, you can't just shovel it out. Like anyone who's tried to like solve their problems in, one LSD trip or a short round of extremely expensive therapy knows that like you can't just go in there with a shovel and be like, that's it, we're going to clear this, all of these old attachments out. It's gradual. It slopes gradually from the shallows to the depths, and and by you do it by encountering exactly where you are and letting go of the impulses that would pull you uh, off the path, essentially. Really, really, that means like pull the heart into more confused states, give rise to unwholesome states. And so, um, one of the places this is clearest really is in meditation, where you're working on, tranquility practices, as we've been doing for some time, looking at anapanasati. Those steps of become aware of the chitta sankhara, the heart stuff, and then bring to stillness the chitta sankhara, Become aware of the body, right? The body stuff, kaya sankara, that's impulses to movement, and let go of them. Let them quiet. This is the like, oh, I have an impulse to move, and I'm not going to give into it. Right? I have an impulse to go for the chocolate. I'm not going to give into it. I have an impulse to call my ex. I'm not going to give into it. I have an impulse to whatever it is, you know. And so there is an effort there, but it's a very soft effort because it's the effort to not do rather than the effort to do. And I think this effort to not do, because tranquility is so helpful in seeing clearly, that effort to not do can be a lot of the effort we draw on. And especially if we're stuck in strong striving, the effort to not do can do a lot of work for us here. There's a beautiful text called the Fear and Dread Discourse. It's Majjhima Nikaya 4, the Bhayabharawa Sutta, where the Buddha describes that before he was awakened, he was finding himself afraid a lot at one point in his practice. And he decided to go to places that would invoke fear, which was like sacred groves in the woods and temples and things. This is partly because ghosts and spirits frequent those places. And then he would just practice there. And then when the fear came upon him in those places that he was kind of inviting, but he was just waiting to see if it would arise. When the fear came upon him, he would stay in the posture that he was in. So he would keep doing whatever he was doing without changing it until he could let that fear dissipate. So if he was doing walking meditation, he would keep walking. If he was standing, he would keep standing. The cat is doing her funny bowing, like she's just begging for me to open the door, but just doing that thing. I don't even know. I'll open the door for you in a minute, sweetheart. He would just stay doing what he was doing until he could shift the state, until the fear was able to be let go. And this, I think this speaks beautifully to the kind of effort. There's definitely some effort there. He put himself in fearful places. He said, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to shake it off, right? Part of what I see in the like not changing postures is um, that kind of shakes up, like fear is such a somatic state. Changing postures or changing your activity could take you out of contact with it. So he keeps doing exactly what he's doing so he can stay in contact with it. And then he's doing this like, I'm not going to do anything else. And it's the effort to not do. And he lets it move through. So much of our effort is in that way. And we're balancing the kind of effort that we're bringing to continue to so many of the wholesome states also, it's not like you can make yourself feel joy or make yourself feel tranquility or concentration or mindfulness even. Uh, so many of the wholesome states, it's almost like you let go into the wholesome states as well. You kind of let go into mindfulness. I say like, okay, notice. I'm already noticing, right? But the moment of saying like, may mindfulness be more present or stronger in this moment, that intention by itself, the quality opens up a bit. There was one last reflection that I wanted to get to, having touched on intention and effort, really these kind of pillars in practice. While we're practicing, I'm not sure if I can weave this into those things, so I'm just going to answer the question separately, and then we'll flow right into questions anyway. This was a question around in meditation, like listening to instructions, how to be really in the practice while listening. What do you do when the mind is not, like easily dropping into the zone, but we get pulled? How am I? What do I do when the external situation is not always easily conducive to dropping in the way that I want to. And this may not be, I'm not sure actually this is exactly your question, so tell me if it is or isn't. Um, but I do want to say around, part of it was a reflection on listening to guided meditations, like the instructions that I give in the meditations. And I want to say this every once in a while, every year or so anyway, because there's lots of different ways of giving meditation instructions or sitting together. And sometimes I go through periods of giving a lot of instruction and sometimes less. Generally, I'll say, give 90% of your attention to your body and your own practice and let the words kind of float through in a guided meditation. Sometimes there's more content there, they're more cognitive, there's more to listen to. If it ever starts to be like more like listening to a talk and it's mostly thinking engagement and not so much body or body and breath or being in yourself. If you notice that's happening, just let it go. Let the talk go a bit. Like shift the focus again. Make the body and the breath foreground. Let the instructions be background. And it's absolutely true that, when we're not on retreat, um, when the conditions are such that it's not as easy to drop the mind into silence. Um, I mean, first of all, like, yeah, it's just like that sometimes. So, bows to ordinary mind, right? Um, if you need encouragement there, you can, remember that ordinary mind is the way. Um, but um, she is, the cat is the way. Um, and and I think there's something really powerful and important and beautiful about figuring out how to be with the mind when it's pulled by the senses, pulled into thinking, um, in a way that still is nourishing, that isn't just being lost in thought or isn't just kind of succumbing to the flow of story. For me, the thing that I do most when the mind is like that is, you know, to finish with just like to be back at like the ocean gradually sloping kind of metaphor. Uh, there's a certain state that I know where I'm comfortable swimming a fair bit out from shore. I'm comfortable with the bottom of the ocean not being near my feet, right? I'm comfortable being out with where the algae or the underwater plants are kind of wrapping around my ankles a little bit, which sometimes is really scary and sometimes is totally chill, and it's a different state that I'm in. And if I'm in the wrong state for being out there, it's not pleasurable. It's not good swimming. Um, and if I notice that, I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't really working. I don't like the vines, I don't like the kelp grabbing my ankles. I don't feel strong in my swimming body. I'm scared that I'm too far out. I don't like the waves, whatever. Don't be there. Like go back toward the shore. You know, if I'm meditating and maybe I sit down and what I really want to do is, we've been working the Anapanasati steps, and I really want to drop back to the kind of like seventh and eighth step, really quieting the heart, deep stillness, like, oh, that's where I want to be working. Yeah, there's what you want and there's where you are. And sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, that's not what's happening right now. Right now, the practice is like, I'm, I'm here in the room and I'm breathing and I look around a little bit and I kind of get into the body a little bit. And I'm like, I'm just going to land kind of just here. And I try to do less, you know. Beautiful parenting advice, that was really helpful for me and us in the early days of having a little one. came from the hand-in-hand people, which is a beautiful parenting method, if you need a parenting method. Very, very resonant with the Dharma. And, you know, their approach is mostly about connection. It's entirely about connection. Whatever's going on, connection is better. It's going to be, connection helps. And, and, and weaving that with a sense of a kind of ladder of interventions where whatever's happening, the gentlest possible intervention is best. So if you can redirect the behavior without saying anything, just by kind of coming close and being like, then that's very nice. And if you need to say something, just a few gentle words and that works, that's very nice. You know, if you have to make contact, making gentle contact, that's very nice. If you have to make stronger contact, make the gentlest contact you can to get the result. So, and so like you never jump to the fiercest, strongest, hardest intervention. You do the gentlest intervention that'll possibly work. And so in a moment when the mind is not cooperating in the way that I wish, right? I get as close to the shore as needed to be well. And you know, and sometimes you come way back into the shallows and you're like, yeah, things are painful. Here I am. Here's the cat. You know, it's onward, right? Like just start with the shallows. And it's good. It's good to just be gentle with the mind. All right, so I don't know if that answered all the questions, but there was a bit of a weave from what was shared. It's just after our formal close time. And I said I would weave back into time for questions, but tonight I'm going to close here and not do more questions. So we'll chat more next week. But I want to share the merit from our year together as we close. So just take a moment and land if anything needs to be further landed. And for however long each of you has been with us and joining this little group and in this long conversation, investigation practice we've been doing together, just feeling our time together this year. And with gratitude for the gift of Dharma friendship, for the gift of the teachings, for the gift of the example of the Buddha and the great practitioners through all time and space, freeing the heart completely from fear, from greed, hatred, and delusion, for teaching a path that's beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful in the end, that slopes gradually but inexorably into the deep ocean. And with gratitude for the Triple Gem and for each other, we offer the merit of our practice this year for the benefit of all. May all beings be at ease, safe and protected from harm. May all beings know the great ease of well-being and find the heartwood of the holy life, profound freedom. May all the wars end, inner and outer. Blessings for our year, blessings for everyone everywhere, and yeah, and then my personal blessings for each of you, that you have a beautiful new year and a blessed turn of the solar year. It's a joy to practice together. So thank you so much for being here.